Okay, the next belly we're going to be starting. I cut the strands at two strands at 24, one at 21, one at 15, and one at 11. Again, they're going to be posted in the description and on the screen right there, probably. So this time, what we're doing, we started this first belly here, but this second belly and everything else, we're actually going to be braiding over the whole handle as well. So this belly is going to attach up here at the top, and basically the exact same way that we did the first belly. We're going to take, we've got our 5 strands. I'm going to take 3 of them and I'm going to wrap them over just like so. And then these next 2 are going to come up through here the same way as we did on that first belly. Let's poke this one up through, poke this one up through, and again, nice and carefully, and go ahead and pull them out. One, and there's the other right there. All right, and we're going to snug that down. All right, and now we've got 5 strands on either side, and this belly is going to be a 10 Plat, and then we're going to drop the strands down as we go. Now, starting it off up here, if you had a vise, like a bench vise, you could prop it up in there and it would be a lot easier. I don't have one at the moment, so I'm just kind of making do. So this one, we're gonna go, because we have 5 on either side, we're going to go ahead and go under 2 and over 3. And that's going to be our plaiting for the 10 Plat. So now we work this side and we're going to go under 2, over 3. And now that these strands are getting really long, you definitely have to be careful to keep things from getting tangled underneath. It will become just impossible to undo. So I suggest that you pull them all the way through every single time. It's just going to save you a lot of headache later. I'll do one more. Right there. All right, and then this one go right here, under 2, over 3. All right, and now, as you can see, we're still up here. We're up here on the end of the handle. I'm just going to just squish that up there, make sure that the handle gets covered all the way. And now I'm going to tighten it all down real good. I'm not going to pull too crazy tight because, again, we're just starting off the belly, so there is the chance that we could just pull the whole strand, and I don't want to do that because then I would have to start over, and that would make me very annoyed. Okay, So that's it. It's going to be that 10 Plat all the way down. I'm going to go ahead and do that and then check back in. Okay, so I've braided down about 2 feet of this belly. That's including the length of the handle. So length of the handle and then the length of this belly, about 2 feet long. And I've reached the point where I want to drop my first 2 strands. I'm going to be dropping the shortest strands. As you can tell, there's kind of a lot left. But as I said earlier, these lengths aren't because you go until you run out of that strand. These lengths are just to try to cut down on the amount of wasted paracord. But then I also said, you're just gonna waste paracord. It's unavoidable. So, because I'm doing the 10 Plat, I'm doing under 2/3. I'm going to drop from the bottom and then go into an 8 and then transition to an 8 Plat, which would be under 2/2. So when this strand comes to the bottom, that's when I'm going to drop it and then begin the transition to the 8 Plat. So it's in that 3rd position right now, so we'll braid 1. Actually, this one is coming up next. This one's coming up right next, so I'll drop this one first. It doesn't matter which side you go to first, just as long as you drop the shortest ones. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I'm going to drop this strand. I'm going to drop it from the front side. Make sure everything's tight. Again, like I said, I tend to Plat pretty tight. Okay, so to drop this from the front, basically, I'm just going to braid it one more time. So under 2/3. And then basically just ignore it now. And it's just going to drop into the center. So now I'll go and it'll be under 2/2. Just like that. And then again, that one we are now pretty much ignoring. And then this other side is still going to be under 2/3. I'm going to do that for a few inches just to really make sure that this one is dropped completely and securely. I'm still going to give it a couple of tugs just to make sure that it's tight, but I'm ignoring it from now on under here. So then it's under 2/2. And now that one is inside. So now it's just these 4. Make sure I go under the correct one over here. Again, I like to just kind of, make sure it's down tight. and then it'll get secured in place. And then it's under 2 over 2. So now on the right side I'm going under 2 over 2. And on the left I'm still doing the under 2 over 3. I'm just going to do that for a few inches to really get past this first part of the transition. In fact, now that that's in there completely, tighten these things up. And then, where is it? It's this one back here. I'm just going to take it and just, I don't know, just a couple inches long. Just cut it off. And then that's it. And so that one is 1, 2, there it is. Sorry, just kind of lost my place there for a second, but we're all good. All right. And I'm going to come back in a couple of seconds when I'm ready to drop that that strand from this side. Okay, so now I'm at the point where I'm going to drop that strand from the left. I'm going to come over going to braid that one. Okay, and now this one on top is the one I'm dropping. I'm going to bring it under 2 over 2, and then it's just going to fall into the center, and then I'll be doing under 2 over 2 on both sides. And that's it. Now it's going to just be the 8 Plat down until ready to drop the next strand and go to 6 Plat. This is going to be the same. I'm going to just braid a few pieces, making sure everything is snug down. And then I'll cut that one off in a second. Alright, it's probably good enough. Tighten everything up as usual. And this one, just a couple inches, pop, and that's it. So now you're down to 8 Plat. And I'll just go ahead and do this until we go down to 6 Plat. Okay, I've braided down a couple more feet, and now it's starting to get a little crowded. Almost done with the last little tail of that first belly. So I'm gonna start dropping down to 6 Plat. Again, I'm gonna drop the shortest string that I have, which in this case is this one right here. But just as we did in the last belly, when I go to the 6 Plat, on one side I'm going to be going under 1 over 2, and on the other side I'm going to be going under 2 over 1, because again, that just works out slightly nicer for some reason. So one of these strands I'm going to drop from the top, and then the other one I'm going to drop from the bottom. So this first one I'll drop from the top. And then to drop from the top, all I need to do is take it, and instead of going under 2 over 2, we're just going to go underneath everything. Just bring it all the way around, and that's dropped. And now we still have to actually work this side, so now we've got 1 over here. And so we're going to bring this one under 2 over 2. And then when we go to work this side, this is going to be our, hold on. And as we go to work this side, this is going to be our under 1 over 2. Just like that. And that's how you drop a strand from the top. And then we're just going to keep going for a few inches. Let's do 2 or 3. And then when you're doing this and that one's hanging, careful not to pull that one, because back here on the back side, let's see if I can show you, that one that we dropped, it's this one right here, there it is, it's this one right here. If we pull that, it's gonna suck under, and there's gonna be this big ugly gap here, which right now at this moment, that's not a big deal, because again, this is a belly, it's gonna get covered, but just be aware of it so that later when it's the overlay and it does matter, you don't do that and then create a big ugly mark on the outside of your whip. All right, so that's a few decent wraps under there. So I'm going to cut this one probably about halfway to where that belly ends. And the reason I'm cutting these off the ways that I am, it's again, everything is basically about creating that taper, that thinning of the whip from the top to the bottom, because that is how the energy transfers down the whip and then creates the crack at the end. So now just going to cover that piece up. So now we're in a 7 plat, going under 1 over 2 on this side, and we're still under 2 over 2 on this side. I forget if I mentioned it earlier during the first belly, but when you are dropping these strands, you could just drop them both simultaneously. You could do that. That's fine if you feel like it. I don't, because, oops, just kicked the stand. I don't do that because, again, that taper is what's important. So if you drop them both at exactly the same moment, it can just kind of create a small rough patch, a bump or something. So I just try to space it out, space that transition out over a few inches to just another element of that taper. And then as soon as I have this covered, that's when I'll drop the other side and finish the transition to the 6 plat. Okay, so that's that last little bit there. I'm going to finish the transition from going from the 8 plat through this 7 plat to the 6. This is the strand I want to drop, so I'm going to plat until it comes to the bottom, which will be right now. Alright, so this is the one I'm going to drop, because I dropped this one from the top to make my under 1 over 2, and I want this side to now be under 2 over 1, so I need to drop this strand from the bottom. So we do that the same way we did it a minute ago. It's going to plat right there, and then we're just going to forget about it, like it doesn't even exist. And then on this side, we're going to go under 2 over 1. And that's the end of our transition. We are now in 6 plat. Under 1 over 2 on this side, and under 2 over 1 on this side. And that's it. Snug this stuff up. Give this one a little tug. This is the one that we just dropped, so if we just pull it down, same thing I talked about earlier, there's going to be this big ugly gap here. So make it snug, but make it snug over here. Okay, so that's the end of that transition. Now on all the other ones, I've cut this off. This time I'm actually going to leave it here, because this one right here is where that first belly ends. And so I'm going to keep this in, and this part is going to become part of the core now. And that's just giving it a little bit of mass and a little bit more tapering of the mass down through the end of the whip. So I'm going to leave that there. I'm going to keep platting a couple more feet until I get to the transition to go to 4 plat. Alright, I've been braiding for a while now at the 6 plat, and I'm ready to go ahead and drop down to 4. So I'm going to drop from this side first, and this is where I'm going under 1 over 2, so I'm going to need to drop from the bottom. So I'm going to braid it one more time there. Make sure everything's nice and snug. And then just drop that one and forget about it. And then on this side, I'm now just over one, under one, and we've begun our transition from our 6 plat to our 4. And then on this side, we're going to keep going at the under 2, over 1. Which one am I dropping? I'm dropping that one. These first couple of plats, after you drop it, you got to make sure you're grabbing the right one under there, so that you don't drop it and then just pull it right back out. That wouldn't work. And again, just making sure everything's... I'm not tugging too tight right now, because the only thing on the inside is our sinker cord now. So I'm tugging enough to keep it, you know, tight. But if you pull too hard, the plaiting will bunch up, and that doesn't work. We want to keep it as smooth as possible. It's still going to have a bit of a rough finish, but just like we did with our first belly, when we're done with this one, we're going to roll it, and that'll take out that roughness. Alright, that's enough there to go ahead and just give it a snip. That should be fine. Then we're gonna cover that one up. Maybe go a little bit further at this 5 plat. I'm kind of trying to get towards this knot down here. That's kind of my target for my transition, my full transition for the 4 plat. These lengths that I'm going for, they're not exact. They're not... I'm doing them because they make me feel better. Like having the first belly, try to make it to that 4 foot. This belly, I'm trying to make it to about 8 foot. I like to have the length of the bellies kind of grow evenly, so going from 4 to 8 to 10, all the way up to 12. I'm trying to build it up. Again, creating that nice long taper, getting the weight, the mass of the whip traveling down the whip. Alright, so that one is all the way inside now. I'm just going to do a couple more inches at the 5 plat, nothing wrong with that. Not going to go too far. When you're doing these offset, these odd numbered plats, they can feel a little sideways. I don't think they are. I think they're perfectly fine. They're perfectly valid. Just for some reason, it feels crooked to me. Could just be a touch of OCD rearing its head. It's entirely possible. Still trying to make it, you know, tight, but not too tight. Like I said, probably go one more round at the 5 plat. Because on this side, going under 2 over 1, we're going to be dropping this strand from the top. I'm going to do it the next time it comes to the top. So there it is at the bottom. 1, And there it is at the top again. Just slide this up a little bit. And then just like the last time we dropped from the top, this top one is just going to come all the way underneath. And then it just works into the belly, and we work this side again. And now we're in under one, over one. And that's the transition to our 4 plat. That's the last transition for this belly. We're going to do the 4 plat all the way down till we reach the length of close enough to 8 feet. And that's where this belly is going to end. So just snug these up. Get rid of that knot now. And then I'm just going to trim off. Alright, and that's it. It's just going to be 4 plat down to the end of the whip. The end of the belly. Sorry, misspoke. Alright, so we're at the end of our 4 plat. I've already trimmed these strands so that they taper down. And we're going to do the same thing that we did the first belly. We're going to take our artificial sinew and we're going to start up here. We're just going to wrap it up. I'm just going to wrap it. Again, this doesn't need to be super tight. We're just trying to keep this all together, just kind of as a package. So that it's a little bit easier to handle when we tie our next belly over top it. If you don't do this, you could not do this, but if you don't, when you get down here with the braiding of the next belly, you're going to have all these strands flopping around with all your other strands, then there's potential to get confused. So I don't take that risk. I just wrap these up. And then we're going to go back up, just kind of crisscrossing a little. Just kind of creating that crisscross pattern, filling in the gaps, just so it's a nice, neat package. Just get a length of the cord. Where my little piece went, so I'm just going to cut a new one. I don't think we need this, so I'm just going to put that there, and then once again we're just going to wrap it around. A whole bunch of times. feed it through the loop, and then pull the loop down. And then it's nice and secure. I'm just going to trim that just so it doesn't annoy me later. And there it is. That's our second belly braided. Now I'm going to go roll it. I'll film it again. I don't think that's necessary. It's just rolling the whip. Same as we did last time. Take the piece of wood, roll it nice and firm, nice good pressure, and it's just going to even out all these little rough bits where it's just not quite excellent. It's just going to even them out, and then just make sure that it's nice and round. And then then I'm going to also cut the next and then we're going to do the binding, and I'll come back, get a quick shot of me rolling, and then we're going to do the binding. Okay, now we're going to do our second layer of binding on our whip. Now, much like our first layer, we're going to bind down a ways. I'm not going to go quite as far this time. The binding, each layer of binding is going to be a little bit shorter, so that there's more tension at the back end of the whip near the handle and slightly less as it goes up. So you have more spring down here and slightly less up there, and that is what's going to transfer the energy more efficiently. So just like the last time, I'm going to give it a quick layer of hockey tape. Only going to go about halfway, so this will be about, our first layer of binding we did about 2 feet. This one we're going to do about 18 inches. So I'm going to go up about halfway, give it maybe about 9 inches of hockey tape. Again, just so that it has a good layer to sit on top of and not really get in between the plaiting. And that's, I'll go one more around just for fun. There we go. All right, again, going to be using the artificial sinew. And we're just doing the same thing as we did the first time. I'm going to start with a tail right there to lock in the sinew. And we're just going to go around down at that 45. Again, we're putting a lot of tension on this because we want to create that stiffness. And we're going to do this exactly the same as we did our first layer. I'm going to go down about 6 inches or so. And then back up, and then back down, and then back up, and back down, building up the binding, building up the tension, giving our whip a real nice springiness. I think I mentioned this earlier. You can do more or less binding depending on how you want your whip to perform. I'm doing all of this binding because I want a particular performance out of my whip, and also because it's a long whip, so I want to make sure I have plenty of stiffness down here to transfer all the energy down the whole length of the whip. All right, and then going back down, we're just trying to fill in the gaps where you see that there is no binding, there's no sinew. And then this time we're going to go past where we did on the bottom into new territory for the binding. And we're just going to go up and down until we have the whole 1.5 feet taken care of. All right, be right back. All right, and that's the full 18 inches done. Lots of tension down here at the bottom, slightly less as we go up. And as always, we're going to finish off. Take our little loop. Bind it around. And then snug it in there. There we go. And that's the bonding done. Now I'm going to go ahead and give this a roll on the ground real quick. Then I'm going to cut the strands for the next belly, our final belly, before the overlay. And then we'll be back to do the plaiting.